the director of research some years ago, and after that he's done a lot of other things. He currently works for the Spotifyn, and I'm really glad that he came here and promised to share us with some of the insights he's learned. And I'm sure that it's going to be very interesting and entertaining as well. So welcome, Keith, and thank you for being here.
It will be very entertaining if I fall off the end of this stage, so I'm not going to try not to do that. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here to Tampere, the Manchester of Finland, I'm told, by everybody who I've met, basically, and that's good to hear for me, because I'm a northerner at heart. So I'm actually from the north of England, from the good industrial land. So it's good to be here in an industrial town with a new heritage, and even better surrounded by some very nice water, which we don't have in Manchester as far as I'm aware. So thank you to Musiikki&Media and to Katarina and Eva for helping me sort out the logistics, and my good friend Tommy for inviting me here today. My name is Keith Jopling. I work at Spotify. I'm the global head of strategic intelligence. What the fuck does that mean? I had to make up that title. It took me quite a long time to do that. But the short version is I inform, and my team informs and supports strategy at Spotify, which is interesting because the strategy changes pace a great deal. And in today's tech and music and media creative world, it can change very rapidly. So a lot of what I do is keeping up with competitors. What is our competitor landscape? What are the new markets that we should be moving into? Market trends, because markets these days are extremely different. I've never known a time like it. Every market is slightly different. And then new opportunities that Spotify should be looking to next. So I think for today's talk, it's built on a program as creativity and innovation, so I'm pleased about that. So I'm going to talk to you about creativity and innovation. I'm not going to stand up here and reveal to you that Spotify has some amazing new announcement to make. We already did that last week when we launched in Japan, our 60th market. And I'm not going to revise Spotify's business model to a user-centric model or anything like that today. But I'm going to talk to you about, I guess, a little bit of the wider perspective on streaming and what it offers the marketplace now. But you all know that to some extent. You helped us build this streaming model in the world, in the Nordics. And then I probably want to just tell you a historical story almost from a personal perspective, because I've been in the music industry since the year 2000. So I joined right at the start, the heyday of Napster and the death of the industry. So I want to walk you through that brief history. And then to get to where we are now, and to make the point that really in the last 12 months, in my view, from my perspective, the acceleration in the pace of innovation in the way we listen to music has really picked up. I think it's picked up massively, and I think there's been a lot of changes that really begin to change the way we think about and consume music in the future. So I'm talking really about amazing features, playlists. I'm talking about new playlist brands that are emerging, and then we'll go through those features and then focus a little bit on the future. So, I mean, does that sound okay as an agenda? Yeah, happy? Okay, good. So a little bit of Spotify. I think you know the story, so I will not dwell on this. Launched in 2008, and now very much the biggest music streaming platform globally, with 100+ million users. You probably do some math and realize that if we launched, if we achieved 40 million subscribers just last week, I think that was announced, then you were probably heading closer towards 110 and beyond that now. Yes, before Spotify it was about CDs and downloads, and now it is about access and discovery and enjoyment. We've kind of opened up that window and have been very successful at it. So you know this story. And this one too. Streaming has got to a position now where actually the industry feels pretty good again. I think there's cautious confidence, but streaming is actually delivering most of the growth in music, and it's actually delivering an overall uptake in the music industry right now. So it's the first time we've had this kind of confident growth really since the late 90s. And these charts show that. So the IFPI chart shows an increase in the rate of growth for streaming. And then, of course, if there is success in the marketplace, everybody wants a piece of that success. So what didn't really happen with the download model, where iTunes dominated for so many years and others didn't come into the marketplace, we don't have that problem in streaming. We have a problem in that we're into a very competitive space now. But for the labels and artists, this is probably a good thing. And as you can see from the chart on the right-hand side, at the moment the global business is sustaining 7 or 8 global players, and then in individual markets, in China, Tencent, in Korea, KKBox, etc., there are usually global players that are number 1 or 2 in that space as well. So really we're talking about maybe 20 or 30 streaming services right now competing for the marketplace. And that's helping to drive growth, and that's good. And we are leading that growth. So as I said, one of my responsibilities at Spotify is to track the competition and to worry about the competition on behalf of this business. And to be honest, I'm saying to people at the moment, let's not worry. Let's just get on with it and do what it is that we want to do. We essentially own this category. There's still a lot more that we can go for. When you think about streaming, you think about Spotify. If you go to a party and someone is streaming music and pumping out a playlist at a party, and you look at where it's at, it's a Spotify playlist. It tends not to be an Apple playlist right now. So we're in a good position. Having said that, when you have the likes of Apple and Amazon and Google parked on your lawn, you have to watch them very carefully. So we're doing pretty well in terms of the premium space right now. And I think what I aim to do is give you some confidence in what we're thinking about the possibilities as we move forward to maybe increase that distance a little bit more. And I just wanted to also, as part of this wider perspective, just talk about this streaming and sharing economy, because I was reading on the way up here a magazine that is published by PwC Strategy. And the leader piece in this magazine was about the dream global media conglomerate, right? Who would you put together if you were to build a worldwide media business that did everything? And of course, Facebook was in there, Netflix was in there, etc., etc. And I was pleased to see from a music point of view that Spotify was in there, even though they also picked Jonathan Ivey as their designer to just make things look better, perhaps. Apple didn't feature there for music. Again, Spotify was the number 1 choice. And I think we're privileged in that puts us in this very elite group of global tech businesses that have transformed spaces and in many ways transformed people's lives. So, I mean, Daniel has a very ambitious and sense of being in this company, you know, with Facebook and Uber and the Twitters of this world and Snapchat. And it does paint a picture of some good opportunities if we can build that network. So it's about demand creation. We talk a little bit about demand creation at Spotify, and there's a few examples I want to share with you. The examples on this board, you know, have created demand as well as disrupted businesses. Okay, it kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. But you can't argue that Netflix has created demand now that it's investing 3 or 4 billion a year in original content. That's made a new economy for producers and creatives who have been feeding into that. And we'd like to do some of that, and our playlists are kind of doing that at the moment. If you think about the number of emerging businesses whose job it is to get artists onto playlists, analyze their playlist data and help them with their marketing. That's kind of created a whole universe of those consultancies and agencies. And the same with some of the things we're able to do with our superfans. So when we put the concert recommendation either directly emailed to our users or on the fan pages as they browse, we see a 10x spike in their concert ticket sales. That's not something we benefit from commercially right now, but we do it as part of demand creation. So once you have a network of 100+ million users and you're on your way to your second 100 million users, you have this network effect that has a lot of enormous possibilities. So I just want to kind of leave you with a picture of what that could possibly create. Maybe we'll talk specifically about some of those. So we're very much part of this streaming and sharing economy now. It's actually not the presentation I edited yesterday, so I'm gonna improvise a little bit. I'm gonna take you back to when I started my time in the music industry in the year 2000. So I joined the IFPI in 2000. I was very excited to come into the music industry because previously I'd worked in boring businesses like energy and pharmaceuticals. So I went from drugs to music. So natural progression on that one, you could say. When I arrived in the industry, I sort of was quite surprised to witness this almost universal sense of mad panic. You know, Napster had just come out of the blue from nowhere. People were talking about the death of the industry, and actually, you know, the industry was pretty scared. And I kind of looked at this picture, and I felt excited, actually. I didn't really care too much about piracy, which I wouldn't have said at the time, so I probably would have been fired. I was more interested in how new services could create a digital relationship with consumers and what that could mean. You know, what that could mean for the way artists release music. Maybe song by song, not by album. Maybe different versions of the album. Or many more pieces of content, remix, multimedia content, etc. And then through the digital relationship, knowing what the user or the fan wants to listen to a little bit, and being able to alert them when their favorite artist is about to make a new single or release a new single. Those kind of possibilities I was very excited about. And it took a long time for that to unfold. I mean, really, if we're talking about maybe from 2003, 2004, the big catalyst at the time was probably the launch of iTunes in 2004. But it took a lot of time, and iTunes and Apple innovate on a fairly slow and steady rate, particularly when they didn't really have too much competition. So it took a lot of time for them to introduce things like cover flow, where you could actually see the cover of the album rather than a list of, you know, something that looked very much like you were selecting it from a download list. It took them a long time to figure out recommendation engines like Genius, and even when they did, it didn't work too well. So it took a lot of time, really, for those kind of exciting innovations to come through, and streaming was a big breakthrough there. So I remember I was actually at EMI in 2008 and very excited about, we had this ambitious idea to make all of EMI's catalogue available to stream. We were going to do something pretty groundbreaking. Okay, the idea had its limitations because EMI only had a 10% market share, so I did point that out at the time, but we were still going to do it. And what happened is that two things happened, really. MySpace came along and made a universal destination for people to go and look at artists and stream 3 or 4 tracks. And then Last.fm came along and opened up the whole catalogue for streaming. So they kind of beat us to the punch. But it was exciting for me because it meant that those ideas that I wanted to see were beginning to unfold. And on top of Last.fm and on top of YouTube, we had a lot of exciting blogs that came along and brought curation into the space. I remember I used Hype Machine a lot. Do you remember Hype Machine? Is it still around? I loved Shuffler, which came out of the Netherlands, I believe. Shuffler FM. So curation became really important. But there was still something missing at that stage. But what was really missing was ease of use, scale. All of these services were very fragmented. If you were a tech-savvy young super fan, you would go and find this stuff. You'd have to spend hours on the web looking around to find this stuff. And that thing that came along in 2008 was Spotify. And again, I was at EMI and I remember exciting conversations about this young guy, Daniel Ek, and he was going to come and change the business, and there was a real kind of sense of buzz about this platform. And when we launched, I think we were successful because we had this strong convergence of elements that were previously missing. So we had a super slick, easy to use user interface. We had a pretty amazing business model where you could get the songs for free, but if you wanted this portability to your mobile, you could pay a premium, and that whole business just came together and worked really well. So we've got to this point in history, 2009, 2010, where the possibilities were beginning to unfold. But what I want to come to you now with is where we've got to really just in the last 12 months. And it's very exciting for me to be there now and see this happening. I think our product team is really crushing it at the moment with some of the things that they're getting out to users on the platform. So I want to share some of those with you and talk you through some of those. And I just put this graphic up actually to demonstrate that in that history, we had all of these pathways had a different importance. Okay, so streaming brought access, global access to music, and that for a while was the biggest thing. The fact that you could get the songs available somewhere and you could hear them before you wanted to buy them. And then acquisition models gave us the chance to download, stream, or you could still pirate if you wanted to, but you could get some way where you could control your music or own your collection. The management thing was really about the download world, how you manage your collection in the cloud, but we've got to a space now where really it is about how you discover and enjoy your music collection. So that's the space right now that's really exciting. So let's just take a look at some of the things that we've been doing in that space. So this is 1 year in the calendar of product innovation at Spotify, which I think is pretty astonishing. In 12 months, we've gone from launching Spotify Running, which again is a successful application of music in itself, where we've had a relationship with the Runkeeper app. We've had artists like Tiesto creating bespoke content for our running feature, all the way through to Daily Mix, which was launched a couple of weeks ago. I want to focus on a couple of these. You've probably heard a lot about Discover Weekly. I'm guessing you've heard a lot about Discover Weekly. Is it called Discover Weekly in Finland? I don't want to get this wrong.
No, it's called Viikon Suositus.
Okay, I'm not going to repeat that, you see, but you know what it's called. You know, it was a breakthrough because it's probably the first time in the history of music services where we really have got this mix of curation and recommendation really right. And that's why it had rave reviews, that's why it had 2/5 of our platform using it really from the get-go, and it settled down to having some really loyal users, and I use it and love it. It doesn't hit every time, but I think most of the time it works. And it's this wisdom of crowds, you know, where we have the data to identify a pool of people who have similar tastes to you, but we can recommend to you what other stuff they're listening to that you don't know yet. And it's beautiful in the way that it works. And on a Monday when Discover Weekly is released, in the aggregate, when all of the fans of Discover Weekly get onto that playlist and stream, that's actually the biggest playlist on our platform. Which, when you think about it, is just on a Monday, a global radio station of millennials around the world that is bigger than any other radio service out there. So it's a kind of personalization that aggregates to something really, really huge. So we're really proud of it, and it really got us off the ground in terms of our discovery tools. And we're leading the market in that space. And so it's no surprise then that these services are now being copied by the competition very intensely. So, you know, Apple, 9 to 12 months it took them to develop My Music Mix and get it on the marketplace. And I use it, and it's not bad, but it's not as good as Discover Weekly. I'm biased, but I try not to be biased. But we're going to see this a hugely competitive space where we are leading and we will be followed and copied. And it's going to be very, very interesting. I want to also focus on fresh finds because it was just a couple of months ago I was having breakfast with the MD of a label services group, a global label services group, and he asked me this question: what is Spotify doing for new up-and-coming artists, even unsigned artists? You know, I think you have a responsibility to do more for them, etc., etc. And I said, I really agree with you. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to the office, I'm going to spread this message, I'm going to ask some questions, I'm going to find out what we're doing. We must be doing something. And that evening I got back to the office and I asked around a little bit and I got a few strange looks. And that very evening, around 6 o'clock, we launched Fresh Finds, which is a series of playlists. I use one called Six Strings. I think it's incredible. I was listening to it yesterday and the quality of it is amazing. So it kind of instills you with great faith about the quality of new up-and-coming artists and the songs that they can make these days. I didn't even know about it at the time. And again, it's been pretty successful, and new up-and-coming artists want to get on that playlist. I think there's a series of 6, depending on the kind of music you make, and it's out there. So that's Fresh Finds. I'll move on to Release Radar because it's now my favorite feature. I think, you know, there's a certain limit you can reach when you have access to 30+ million songs about how you personally enjoy your own music collection. And Release Radar is just really, really good at aggregating all of the favorite artists that you've listened to recently and doing you a playlist of what they've just made, what they've just dropped, new singles, remixes, cover versions, whatever. And it's a great way of discovering your own music, rediscovering your own music taste. It kind of reminds you why you were passionate about music in the first place. And again, it's a great example of something that was very carefully designed. Data was involved. How would we use data? How would we surface it? How do we present this? And it's pretty effective. So that comes out on a Friday to coincide with new releases. And then finally, it's a daily mix, which is kind of like a gift, really, into your onto your user page. It's just easy access. Okay, if you don't want to look around too much, you can just go to your daily mix and play any one of those. So I want to just share those with you because it's happened in 12 months, which for me is a breathtaking pace of innovation. I don't know what the lifetime value of each of one of these is. Some will last longer than others. Some will get bigger audiences on our platform than others. Some will raise excitement off the Spotify platform more than others. But all of them have worked pretty successfully up to this point. So there's a credit to the teams who designed and launched these features. And I already mentioned Discover Weekly. You know, when you read the tweets and you look at the user feedback and you talk to people on the street about Discover Weekly, you know it's working. It's just great. It's really great to hear about it. I want to talk maybe for 5 more minutes and then give some time for some questions. But after features, I think the next big change that we've seen is playlists. And I'm very excited about this because you could look at this in two ways. You could look at it as these are just modern day compilations. Some of them sound pretty vanilla. Okay, rock this. It doesn't sound that funky, but it is what it is. But look at the followers. And you know, we don't release MAU on this stuff yet, monthly average users, but I can tell you that the average users are not too far off the follower figure. It's a pretty good guide. They're very, very engaging channels. And I think about these not as just playlists. I think about them as global millennial music channels. These are really becoming our cultural brands. I was listening to a New York Times podcast on music a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking at length about Rap Caviar. And we've never really marketed Rap Caviar yet. But look out for us marketing some of these in the near future. Beneath Spotify, we almost have a house of brands. And these are very much brands that we're proud of. They're global, they're heavily millennial. I think they challenge radio in a sense, but they don't even have to be audio. You know, you've read about video coming onto Spotify and podcasts. We can arrange lots of multimedia content around these global channels. So I think the possibilities there are amazing. And these are some of the mass market channels that we have. Okay, so they're pretty well-known genres. Everybody would be familiar with those, and that's why they have a lot of users. But it doesn't just, it isn't just for mainstream music. We've got, we could talk about Nordics on the next panel. We've done some pretty amazing stuff in the last few weeks for Latino, which, again, it's not niche. It's certainly not niche in the US. There are 50 million Latino fans, but we had a Latino hub, which had, I think, a dozen different playlists on there, and was married with a lot of events that took place over the period of a month. So again, really cultural events are taking place around these playlists. And then we have a whole bunch of playlists for the occasions that you want to listen. So we have something called Peaceful Piano. Venues, their record is selling well. It's really transformed their careers in a sense. So if you think about the possibilities of the big global playlists, think also about what we can do with many of those niche genre playlists. I had a visual about that yesterday. I don't know where it's gone. And that's the reason that playlists, there was some research in the States last week that suggested playlists are now the major form of listening beyond albums. So they're rapidly catching up singles, but they've already surpassed albums. Okay, and the reason why is because they're being aggregated and presented so compellingly to users. So it's really changed the game, I think. And I want to finish with content as well. So we've talked about features, we've talked about playlists and the way we arrange content. I haven't really talked much about data, but everybody knows Spotify has some amazing data. And I was told actually last week that for every stream we have 15 data parameters, which would be the user, the artist, but also the geography, the platform it was played on, the playlist the stream was streamed through. If you converge that data, you have a lot of information there. And we started to use some of that in intriguing and fun ways for users. So have you ever tried it, your year in music? Did you try that last year? Yeah, I thought it was fun. I was surprised to find that Justin Bieber was my favorite artist, but I then discovered that my daughters had been hijacking my Spotify platform, so now we have the family service, so she can get off my cloud. I'm looking forward to this year in music for me, so it actually is not infiltrated in some way. Look out for more of that. So really engaging content using the data and making that connection with the user and music, and also building that connection with other listeners who are like you. Because you could compare your own tastes with that in any country in which we're launched, in any genre. And then finally, I wanted to finish with artists themselves. So using data, we're now in a position where we can begin to launch some really, really interesting campaigns with artists around new projects. This is just an example of what we did with Bastille on their last album, where we had a live microsite of the streaming counts around the world, which is just good fun. You could go to the site and see who was streaming the tracks, and just see those counts go up. And you can look out for much more innovation and creativity on individual artist projects, and we're very open to being approached with ideas and very supportive to artists of all types. Established artists, new artists, major label, indie label. We're pretty agnostic. We're just interested in developing creative ideas with artists and talent. So I would probably just want to finish a little bit with a couple of apologies. If you are nostalgic in any way for the old world, and I occasionally am, then I apologize, because it's kind of gone. You can always get your vinyl out. That's a pretty good experience. If you are a futurologist and thinking about the future, I apologize, because it's actually arrived. From here, I think the possibilities with all of these things I've shown you, with voice application, we're going to see a massive amount of change in music consumption again over the next 12 months. And for me, it's just very exciting to be in the music brand that is really leading the field in that area. So thanks again for having me, and I think we have maybe a few minutes for some questions, if you have some. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. It was very interesting. I'm Markus Kaarta from the Finnish Composer Copyright Society, Teosto. And you've discussed a lot about playlists and user interface and how it's great with Spotify, and I agree, it's really great. Some of the things that you showed there as playlists or that are you sort of generating based on users, I still think that it's you don't always find them. Like I noticed some new playlists that, okay, I need to start following them, so in a sense, finding those from the user interface would be nice for the average consumer as well. But overall, from a user experience, I'd like to ask you about the author metadata. Like previously, when you still had records, it was nice to be able to see who's the author, who's the composer of this, and like now I'm just thinking that it would be so great to enable that for the new users, being able to have a playlist based on the author, on the composer, on the drummer, whomever. Do you see that ever be possible?
I see it as being possible. We've done some experiments with Genius, which was on there, but I didn't focus on it. They've both licensed and crowdsourced a lot of good data, lyrics, editorial data around, but it's focused on hip hop and urban music. And we did some projects that we did it with Gucci Mane and Chance the Rapper, had a very good engagement. So I think I see it happening. I see it potentially as a long road, and to some extent it always has been. I mean, all of those elements of media were never quite aggregated in the right way by the industry. The cover art was in one place, the lyrics obviously owned by the publisher in another place, the label copy sitting in a drawer somewhere in another place. So putting it together has always been a real headache. And I remember when iTunes tried it, they launched something called the iTunes album. They tried to charge more money for it because it was so expensive for them to aggregate all that data. I think what we are learning is that there are providers, and we like Genius. I think we had a good relationship with them. We want to do more with them. If we have someone we can work with to aggregate that data, I think they can plug into Spotify and we can apply that data really well. And I think it's great for the user experience. I think we'll get there, but it may take some time.
Yeah, I'm just assuming that when the labels are uploading content, they should have such an author data in the metadata. At least that's what we use when we match to your reports. Like on what you said about lyrics, you did have the feature, it was available if there was lyrics, so it would be interesting even for the ones that the metadata is there to be able to see that. So in a sense also the composers and other authors would be capable of seeing that is my metadata available when the user interface would show that as well.
Yeah, I mean, back to your first point, we do have a challenge in that there's a lot of stuff that you can get on the platform now. And the way we serve that to the individual is something we have to put a lot of work into to make it easy to find this stuff. Because the more content that's on the platform, the harder it gets to find. So we have to solve that problem. Lyrics, of course, we've launched in Japan with lyrics, and really good functionality around lyrics, around karaoke, etc., because it's popular there. So I think that's going to be a test market for us to learn about what we can do with lyrics. So yeah, watch for more to come. Thank you.
Hi, it's Nick Hobbs from Charmeco. This might be a stupid question. In the old days, as a concert promoter, it's a very specific question, but I think it has interesting ramifications. As a concert promoter, when I would decide what artists to promote, I would look at album sales or single sales or album charts, single charts. Then it kind of shifted a bit more to radio play. Then it shifted to Facebook likes. And now, of course, the information which is most interesting to me is streaming, but localized streaming. I'm not interested in the global streaming success of Justin Bieber. I want to know how many streams they have in Istanbul or in Moscow or in Berlin, wherever it is that I might want to promote. And on a club level, the same. That information is not accessible as far as I understand it. There's no way for me to access that information except through the artist themselves if they want to give me that information, which of course artists will give you information if it's in their interest, but they won't if it's not. So that's the question. How do you know, from the point of view of streaming being something which helps the artist's career live, in this particular instance, and therefore, of course, promoters, how does that information open up so that it becomes accessible, at least on a commercial level? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, no, not a stupid question at all. And I mentioned it at the beginning. Okay, so we're in the early days. We have a partnership with Songkick. Everybody knows that. Songkick is the data engine by which we are able to surface and let superfans know of concerts in their location, right? Which we can basically merge the Songkick data together with, obviously, with streaming data. So if you get I realized this was working when Spotify sent me an email to let me know about Guy Garvey playing a concert that was in town. I knew something was possible there. But we're figuring out what to do next about that commercially. Okay, because for now we don't take a cut. We've talked to some of the ticketing companies. It's a difficult market, and I think part of being a strategist in a global growing business is just where the priorities stack up. We know this is of a benefit to artists. When we've done concert recommendations, as I said, we get that 10x spike. We want to do more of it. And we just need to engage with the artist in terms of what they want to do with essentially what is their data. So I can't sort of promise when we'll do it or how we'll do it, but clearly we are now having successful experiments in that area, and it's on the agenda for sure. I can't really say much more than that at this point, but it's a good question. I'll take it further in terms of what I saw yesterday on the user-centric model. So the presentation by Arndt, which I thought was interesting. For me, the idea of us communicating and putting offers in front of superfans gives artists much more lucrative opportunities than just increasing their share of streaming payouts. So concerts is one way. Merch is another. We have a link through Merch Bar where we can put offers on the artist pages for merch. And vinyl probably is another. If we tap into that superfan element, we can put many offers in front of them that benefits the artist in ways beyond their streaming count. So we're really interested in developing that whole space. Is a vague answer to your question, but we have a lot of intent there. Time for one more?
Hello, my name is Bach Mai.
Hi.
This is just a general question in relation to, you were talking about the Fresh Finds playlist and things like Discover Weekly and those kinds of playlists. You were saying you're trying to help the promotion of new on-site artists or independent artists, things of that nature. Is there a kind of team that these artists need to get in contact with to try to make it on the playlist, or is there like a specific means of doing so? Or?
Yeah, you could reach out to the artist relations team. We have artist relations teams in most markets and regions. It's a growing team, so we're putting more effort into that. And they're very open. We're not looking to own repertoire and copyright. We're just looking to put creative ideas into practice. And certainly with up-and-coming artists, we're interested in building and breaking them internationally. And we've got some great examples of that. I think we're going to talk about some of those in the Nordic platform. There's the playlists, there's Spotlight, there's Spotify sessions. There's all kinds of ways in which we can build that relationship. And it's all really, really exciting stuff. Yeah, so it's definitely happening. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.